right, good morning. My name is Teresa Sosha. I'm the event coordinator. Hopefully all of your team captains have given you the description of the event. It looks like this. If they did not, it'll be posted on the website under Extravaganza. I'll read it today if you haven't read it already. Students will interpret and organize information using pictographs, pie charts, bar and line graphs, and Venn diagrams. Students may bring and use any or all of the following: a simple non-programmable calculator, rulers, colored or regular pencils. Great. You can have 1 or 2 students. I advise 2 heavily for this event because to finish the event, you want to divide and conquer the test. I have had single students show up and still finish the test, but if your school can help it, send 2 for this event. The actual competition, there's 2 parts to the test. So there's 35 to 40 multiple choice questions, and then there's a given situation with a group of data that somebody actually has to graph on a piece of graph paper. So if there's 2 students, I advise they split the test. 1 start graphing the graph, and 1 start on multiple choice questions. And then if 1 finishes first, they can help the other one out. Okay. Tiebreaker. If there's a tie, the graph portion will supersede and pick the winner. If there's still a tie after that, we'll have some predetermined multiple choice questions. That'll be the tiebreakers. In the past, we get a wide distribution of scores, but there's always a handful at the top that are too close together. So we're going to add some above grade level questions this year. It's normal. Some of the other events, you can never get 100 on the test, doesn't matter, because they're just that difficult to challenge the students. This one in the past, you have been able to get 100 on the test. So for anyone who has been in it before, just, I guess that was a little bit of a warning. Okay, I'm going to start on the handout now. That's all the event description said. So the handout. I moved to the top. Tools to bring the day of the test was on the event description, but I have to reiterate this because people do not show up prepared, and there's no sympathy. So you've been forewarned. They need a pencil. I will have no pencils. I will not give them a pencil if they don't have a pencil. It is a Scantron. For the multiple choice questions, it's a Scantron, so a pen, I would advise not to have a pen. I'm not sure if it would read in the Scantron or not, but there will be no sympathy. And I'm telling you, every year there are people who show up without anything, and I don't know how they'll fill out the test. So they must bring at least a pencil. For the person graphing, they're going to need to distinguish between the 2 sets of data somehow, so the colored pencils is for that task. Some people have used markers in the past, but then they can't erase it, they make a mistake, and it bleeds, so I really do advise colored pencils. Crayons would work, but they don't erase either, so preferably colored pencils for their benefit. Colored pencils are neater as well, and neatness does in terms of on the graph itself. So colored pencils. Rulers. So the person doing the graph needs a ruler. Straight lines matter, neatness matters. I actually also advise the person doing the multiple choice questions to have a ruler. The graphs will not have the lines behind the points, so they would want to use a ruler to kind of check to see where the bar ends across the axis to figure out a number or answer to it. But at minimum, 1 ruler needs to count. They can use a piece of paper. They can use a pencil as well. But if you could bring a ruler, that would probably help them too. Simple calculator is acceptable. Using a calculator in the phone, we won't allow. A calculator is not required. The data, for the most part, will be, I don't want to say even numbers, but relatively whole numbers, calculations they could do just by jotting in the margin and figuring it out. But certainly a simple calculator is welcome. No phones, no scrap paper. We'll have to use the test papers themselves. If they for scrap paper, we will collect the test at the end. In all of the tournaments, not just the county tournament, the test will be collected. And I'm only giving one piece of graph paper, so the graph paper is part of the test packet, and I will have no extra. So they have to plan ahead before they start drawing, figure out what to do if they make a mistake. You're only going to get one piece of graph paper. Okay. Yeah.
Is graph paper one of the things that you can bring to have
No,
a practice?
I will. Let's get to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can jump right to that. The graph paper will look like this. It's half-inch squares. It's not in the handout. We're just saving paper, but it will be posted online, so you can download as many times as you want and print it out for yourself for practice. So that'll be attached to the test. Okay?
But can they bring?
No.
They cannot?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So that's it, the one piece that comes with the test.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so 35 to 40 multiple choice questions. I've got some examples here as we go along on those. The next paragraph here under the scoring rubric is about the graph itself. So here's the rubric: labeling units on the x-axis, labeling units on the y-axis, a title, a key, a scale that's appropriate. We don't want it. We want it to take up 3/4 of the graph paper and then leave enough room for labels and a title and margins. Don't want it real small, so they need to be able to really plan their intervals so that they're spacing it out on the graph paper appropriately. So even appropriate intervals on the x and y axis. Need lines, the correct type of graph. So the graph will be limited to bar graphs and line graphs. They'll be given a set of data. I have this on the back. It's actually the last example here. Looks like this. Anything I give them, they could use either format. However, certain types of questions, one type of graph is more appropriate than the other, and one would receive full credit versus partial credit. So for example, if it is a set of data that is taking data over time, that should be a line graph. That's the more appropriate graph. If it is things like this one is here, this would be better on a bar graph than a line graph. You could graph with that data regardless, but for the rubric, for the appropriate type of graph, that's the kind of distinguish we'll make for the full 2 points.
And what kind of graph is good for the rubric, you said? To draw it out?
There are 2 points for the appropriate or the correct type of graph. So depending on the question they get,
Oh, okay.
one is more appropriate than another.
Okay.
If it's one that could go either way, then
Okay.
okay. Okay, and then for each point placed incorrectly, that would be minus a point. So you could actually end up with not 0, but lower than you think as you're adding points because of the subtraction of each point. Okay, so let's move on to the examples. So the first one we've actually added, if you've done the test in the past, a Venn diagram as a different concept, an additional concept for the students to know. So here's an example question for a Venn diagram. The following Venn diagram shows how many family members at the birthday party chose to eat ice cream and cake, just ice cream and just cake. So the actual question is how many people ate just cake at the birthday party. So that's an example of a question. And I normally have about 5 to 6 graphs, and then about 5 questions under each graph. On the back is another example. This is a bar graph, and then I've actually got here 3 questions as example questions for interpreting a bar graph. So this is for the beans and the blooms, if everyone turn the paper over. Which bean has more fiber than protein? What's the difference between the amount of fiber in garbanzo and pinto beans? What would be a good label for the y-axis? So those are the types of questions that we would ask about interpreting a bar graph. Okay. And then again at the bottom, for the graph construction, it will be as simple as this. They'll have the last page of the test will show describe a situation, and then they'll be given data, and that's it. And then they'll have to graph from there. Now, additionally, Additionally, there'll be some fill-in-the-blank questions about that graph. So the idea is that the student finishes their graph, and then they read the questions and answer them based on how the graph turned out. So hopefully the graph turned out visually well, and that could be something more than another. This question is really simple. You can actually look at the data and decide for yourself which animal had an equal amount in both zoos, but the questions will be more, you would need to have the graph to answer the question. Okay. Also on the website is a list of terminology that you can use to coach. On this, there's a couple of websites and some ideas to get examples. If you have access to Time for Kids magazine, that's a really good age level appropriate place to find graphs. And they have pictographs, line graphs, they have every type of graph we're talking about, and they also usually give a couple of questions on that graph, so it's a way so you don't have to come up with them yourself. To teach the kids, newspapers, textbooks, the kids' textbooks, math and science. Actually, history has more graphs in it than the math and science ones, so any of the textbooks that they're using this year, you can get some example graphs from that. And of course, you can make your own on Excel or however you'd like to do that. There's 2 websites here that have some examples as well. Any questions? No. No. Any other questions?
Any questions? You said they're in the 35 to 40. The ones you said were required thinking, or is it like?
Oh yeah, they're in the 35.
They're in the
35 to 40. It's just like if I have 5 questions per graph, one of them might be.
It's going to be picked as the one that's
more challenging than maybe we've had in the past.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, it's fine. They shouldn't worry about that.
All right. And the 35 to 40 includes the ones that they do after they draw the graph as well?
No, those are separate.
Those are separate, so a few more. Okay.
Yeah. But there's plenty of time I've had, if they're trained well enough, they can get through that graph in 20 minutes. And so they had time to do, and I wanted that person to have more to do.
Right.
And then it's another way to, if they graphed correctly, then the questions, if they didn't graph correctly, then they won't answer the questions correctly.
Okay.
So is this the first year they got questions after they create the graph?
No, they had them last year as well.
And are they allowed to communicate during the test?
They're allowed to whisper during the test. The place that they take the test in has these little tables that fit exactly 2 people. So it's not even 2 desks. They can slide papers back and forth. They're separated from all the other teams, so they'll sit together. So they can whisper quietly, but you know, we'll just scold if it's not quiet. Any other? Yeah.
It's total 30 minutes, right, for the...
So, yeah, every event's a total of 30 minutes. Door open to door close, or door closed to door open. By the time they sit down, I hand out the test, they probably have 28 minutes to do the test. I'll give a 10-minute warning, because no phones, they can have watches if they want, but no phones. And then a 2-minute warning, just to help them manage their time. I believe the room has a clock in it, but I guess I can't guarantee if it's the right time. But the room does have a clock in it also. So that's about 28 minutes for the test itself. If they, hopefully your team captains have given you students in events that aren't back-to-back, or if they're back-to-back, they're not in buildings that are far away. So you want to check that, because we will not accept, you come in the day of the test, oh, do you mind if I take it at a different time? So we'll just say no, and then your team will end up with a 0 for that test. So you want to double check that to make sure that, I believe all of the tournament times are posted, that works out.
When it comes down to creating the graph, you said it's going to either be a line or a bar graph. Okay, so they don't have to create the Venn diagram.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just a,
All right.
yeah. Nope, that's why we have these sessions. Any other questions? It's one of the more straightforward events in the whole tournament, so. Hopefully, if you didn't go to John's session, there is a way to post questions if you think of something after this extravaganza. You can post the question on the website, and then we will post a response so that everybody has access to the question and answer. Anything else? Sorry, no?
The other piece that you have, is that, if you click on the event, is it in the resources? The one you said you have, do you know where you have it on there?
I can have the graph.
But the reference is in the, yeah.
The paper is on the, if you go to the event. You go to the event.
Is it on the event?
Oh, okay.
Any questions? Sorry, any questions regarding the pie graphs? Anything related to pie graphs?
Yeah, there will be, for sure, at least one pie graph and then a series of questions for a pie graph. Yeah. Any other questions?
Are there questions over the vocabulary, or is it more just applied vocabulary?
No, but I'm going to use the vocabulary, so we just want to make sure everybody understood what the words meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the name of the website that you said that has a lot of practice graphs?
So the Science Olympiad website, on there, if you go to Grasp a Graph, there will be a number of PDFs that you can download, and then this sheet will be there. And on the bottom of that sheet are some of those links.
Oh.
Other questions?